My name's Claire Leggett. I'm the Director of GP Task Force and I work for Derby and Derbyshire Local Medical Committee. And I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Tara Humphrey, who is a Managing Director of THC and a PCN Manager as well, besides lots of other talents. Do you want to say a bit more about yourself?
Yep. So should I make a start?
Please do so. Thank you.
And so firstly, thank you all for joining. Let me just share my screen. If I keep looking away, it's because I've got two screens. Okay, so can you see the welcome sign? Yeah. Okay, cool. Yep, my name is Tara Humphrey. I am the Managing Director at THC Primary Care. We've been going for 6 years. We work with PCN managers and clinical directors to help them set up their network-based projects. So before primary care networks, I was very much in training hub land, or when they used to be called community education provider networks. We set up 11 across Kent, Surrey and Sussex. I'm based in the southeast. We've worked with GP federations, currently got a contract with NHS England, and we need to do another count, but we have supported well over 500 practices. I really like to write. I say I've got a book in me, but I don't have the time. So for now, when I very first started my role as a PCN manager and also in CPN land, there weren't many resources out there that spoke directly to like the managers setting this service up. So what I started to do is every time I would learn something, I would write a blog, and we've got over 200 blogs and published in the London Journal of Primary Care. We do masterclasses for PCN managers, and it's a little bit on the side is the Business of Healthcare podcast. And because I work in primary care, people think it's just primary care, but it is not. It is what we do is try to share the leadership and management principles, which are universal, and we bring on healthcare leaders to share kind of what goes on behind the scenes. And what I'm really clear is I don't want people to come on and just say how amazing they are and their businesses are. I want to know really what happens. So that's what we do. This probably doesn't really apply, but I did ask, I mean, it's your time, and to get the most from your time, could I ask you to shut down your email? If you have any questions throughout the presentation, just pop them in the chat. That's absolutely fine. Everybody's participation is valued and appreciated, and definitely want to understand what your guys' focus is and where your challenges are, so I can tailor the presentation as we go, and just to be respectful of each other's time. So a bit more about me before I jump in. So I think somebody said to me, when I think of you, Tara, I think of exercise and PCN managers. So I would say I am quite extreme when it comes to like endurance-based exercises. I did say to my husband, why don't I just do a 10K? But in 2019, in that year, I did 100K, a couple of 50Ks, I climbed Mount Toubkal, done a couple of marathons. This year, I'm signed up to climb Everest Base Camp. I've got a 100-mile bike ride coming up and 2 50K runs. Don't ask me why. It's like torture. I don't know why, but I do like the medal. I do like getting a medal and the t-shirt. That's me. And then from a family perspective, just so you're aware, so I'm married to Mark. We've been together for 21 years, married for 12, and we renewed our wedding vows last Saturday. Some friends, 30 friends who are COVID safe in the garden. And from a family perspective, I've got 3 girls. I don't know if you can see, but Layla, who's got like the peachy top, she's got her thumbs up. She's the middle child. She's got lymphotic syndrome, which is a kidney disorder. She's on medication, and we're under the Evelina Children's Hospital. Talia, sitting in front of her, is my youngest. She's currently 9. She's got type 1 diabetes, so that is a challenge. And yesterday we had a long chat about her taking a packet of crisps without entering in her carbs. And then Tia on the other side, she's 13. And the other day she said to me, Mummy, I'm sad and depressed and I hate my life. So that's when I'm not, and people say to me, how do you fit it in? Like, how do you have time to work? And I think I work, it's like relaxing at work compared to juggling 3 girls at home. So that's a little bit about me. So to get the most from this session, I had a conversation with Claire and I kind of reeled off loads of things that we could talk about, but what we felt would be quite pertinent is to talk about vision, decision-making principles, and to building on what is working well. But it'd be really good for you guys to share what feels most pertinent to you. So I think we've got a poll. Excellent. Voila. So it'd be really good for you to just type in which feels most pertinent to you guys at the moment when thinking about those three subjects, and that will help me if kind of wait our time to go through those. I don't know if I can see. Okay, excellent. Good. Okay. Okay, this is, yeah, okay.
Can you see that, Tara?
Yes, I can. So let's start. So that's helpful.
Bit split between decision-making principles and building on working well. So probably those topics.
So I'll whiz through the vision bit then. Okay. Okay. Okay, so I really like this quote. I put life inside a PCN, and what's really important is that we provide PCN management services, and I am a PCN manager, and you do not have to do the job to teach or to advise other people, but I do the job. And the network where I'm the interim network manager, there we've got 50,000 patients. It's 8 practices. Okay, I absolutely love it, but it can be very challenging. And I really like this quote. Here is Edward Bear coming down the stairs, bump, 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 on the back of his head behind Christopher Robin. It is, as far as he knows, the only way of coming down the stairs, but sometimes he feels that there really is another way if only he could stop bumping for a moment and think about it. And I think my job, I am hired to stop my CDs and my network bumping along. So I think that sums up, you know, it's not like Mark, it's not like a you know, like a lovely strap line, but that's what I do. The CDs that work with me just say help, or the practice managers say come in and just, sometimes it's nice to have an external pair of eyes. And for me to make sure I'm on the pulse of everything, I need to be doing the job. So the things I'm going to share with you is not academic. It's not like, this is the stuff that we actually do. And another thing I'll always share with people that I'm working with is the mindset, and the fact that you guys are so incredibly busy, but you're taking the time to come to this shows me that you do have the mindset. But I do want to say to you, when I talk through some of the things and share some of the things that we do, to have the mindset that some of this stuff can work for you. And if you have a reaction where you think, she's start talking crap, we can never do that. I would say just sit with it. There may be something that may be helpful. You can mix and match. So there is an exercise where if the words don't resonate with you, you can change them. If you don't like all of the questions, you can change them. So you can mix and match. I am not a purist. I do have an MBA. I am quality improvement trained. I do love the theory, but I like the practicalness, and you can change it. You want to try, and it's an experiment. If you try something that I've suggested and it doesn't work, it doesn't mean that I'm crap, and it doesn't mean that the idea wasn't very good. It means that it didn't quite work in your context, and everything is a test and an experiment until it works. And then something like COVID happens, and then we all have to do things differently. Okay, so everything is an experiment. So sometimes we don't try things because we don't know how it's going to pan out. But if you don't try, you'll never know. And even if it doesn't go well, there is, I hate, you know, like I'm not a Pollyanna, but there is always a lesson. And sometimes the lesson is, I will not do that again. And then you can just move on. Okay. So another area which I think is quite important for us all to remember is the stages of development. So there is a psychologist called Bruce Tuckman, and I think lots of you would have heard of forming, storming, norming, performing, and then there's a journey. And the reason why I bring this up is that every time you get a new project, a new person joins your network, you try something new, you enter into this cyclical stage of development. So forming is you're starting, it's all feels quite nice. It feels very exciting. We've got this project, if you want to do it, that is. And that you're coming together, you've agreed to come together, and it's all quite nice. And you're trying to work out your role. It's all nice. And then you come into storming. And it can feel feels really horrible. This is when people start to you start to push up against people's boundaries, but you didn't know that they were a boundary. So everybody's values starts to come to the forefront, and it can feel really not a very nice environment. And from a PCN manager perspective, and when you have new roles coming in, people leave, and I say to people, this is normal. This is what happens. Sometimes you might skip through storming really quickly, and sometimes it can feel like you're there for a really long time, but that is normal, and really would encourage people to slow down, keep talking, and do that soft. The storming comes because you don't know each other and you don't trust each other, or something's happened in the past and you're bringing the past into the present. It's not to say that you shouldn't, but I think when you're aware of it, you can move through it. Then you get to norming, things settle down, you feel like I've got a bit of direction, we've got our vision, we know where we're going. Little conflicts come up and you can move through them. Then you're performing, then you're like, yes, got it, we've got our COVID vaccinations, kind of hated it initially, and now it's like I can meet people, you move into a journey, people are taking other areas are taking over the COVID vaccinations, and you're like, oh, I really like doing that. And like you've done all of that hard work, and then the project ends, or the project becomes business as usual, and then you'll get another project, and it all starts again. So having that framework in the back of your mind, I think, can help bring sense to sometimes the madness. And another thing I have noticed is that we may feel like we may all be in the project. Claire, you may be new, so you're forming, you're like, this is great. You may have just walked into a team that's storming. You're like, what is going on here? Other people think, well, this is fine, I know my bit, and they're performing. So we're always meeting each other at different points. And I think as leaders, we have to recognise that and try to bring people back onto the same page. Sometimes it can feel like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but that is leadership, that is change management. Okay, so I won't press too much on this, but the benefits of having a vision. Okay, it should provide you direction. I did a podcast system the other day. You don't have to have a vision, but sometimes I think it's so much easier when you know what you're doing and where you're going. Keeps you moving forward. It's that motivation, focus. It can help you overcome challenges because we need to get over this bump to be able to get to where we're going. Reminds us of why we are here. Sometimes I love my job, but sometimes I think, well, what are we doing? Like, what are we doing? Why are we doing this? Can help you with your priorities, creates a shared understanding and a collaboration of ideas. Okay, so that's the benefits. If you're thinking about so for those of you that need to refresh their vision, or you feel like you don't have one, but from looking at the poll, you do all have one, I'll go through this exercise really, really quickly. When thinking about the future of your PCN, you can do this in person, on Teams. You can have these questions in advance, write on a post-it note or write on Google Jamboard. When thinking about the PCN, of what is in it for me personally. Okay, we all have a personal stake. As much as we say it's about patients, the reality is we have to do the work. We have to want to work together to support our patients. So what is in it for me? And then everybody answers and you will get themes. What is in it for the practice? Everybody shares their individual insights. You share them as a team, you'll start to emerge themes. What is in it for our patients? So you'll start to get some themes, and I would be very shocked if depending on how much, everybody says something completely different. And if that is the case, you just talk about it. Why do you think that? Have you thought about this? And somebody will be like, oh, I didn't think of that. So it's a really good way to spark discussion and really understand people's personal motivations and what is going on inside of their practice. Another question that we ask is, if we had to choose 3 things that requires the most attention in our network, what would we do? You'll start to get themes around workforce, premises, retention. Lots of CDs are saying succession planning. I kind of signed up because everybody else stepped back, but now I want to step back, but I feel that I can't step back, but I don't want to do the job anymore. So that's always a fun conversation. And if we had to choose 3 things that requires the most attention in our practice, what would we choose? And that is really interesting and telling, because sometimes there's a lack of engagement because the practice priorities are completely different from the network priority. So then the network feels like extra work. So it's really important to understand what is going on inside of your practices. Sometimes the network feels on top, but it should be part. It should be helping the practices to relieve the pressure and do the things you want to do versus it being on top. Another question we ask when thinking about the vision is, what will I lose if we collaborate? And being very honest about that. There's typically, the bigger the network you go, there will always be some practice and people on the outside. And when you say, and there is a reason for that, and it's, they might not want to give up control, they may not trust the decision-making process. I think it's really healthy debate to say, if we work together, what am I going to lose? Because we have to remember that general practices are independent businesses. They have to give up an element of control, and it's okay to feel like I don't want to give that up. And then the question is, how can we work together? What makes sense for us to do collaboratively? We don't always have to work together. There are some things we don't have to do together, but there are some things, what makes sense for us to do? And then, like your classic questions, what would success look like in 3 years? And then your vision will start to emerge. Your vision is it's not a marketing exercise. It's not a strappy, it's not a short, snappy strap line. We're not working for like Coca-Cola. It doesn't have to be published. It doesn't have to be for anybody else's eyes other than you as a network. It can if you want to, but I think people get caught up in trying to, that's why you'll see everybody's visions like we're trying to support, increase quality of care and accessibility for patients. That may be the case, but I think if you go back to those initial questions, your vision will be deeper than that. And that's really important. And the best thing about doing exercises like this is you're talking, you get to know each other, and you know each other's personal motivations. That's the point. That's the juice of having a vision, I believe. Okay. And what does it look like when you don't have a shared vision? Activity is concentrated in a small section of the network. So just a few people are working on this stuff and everybody else is just kind of sitting back. They don't understand why the particular course of action is being pursued, because they're not bought in. They've kind of disengaged for a variety of reasons. Practices leave the network. I really want to write a blog on this because it's seen as bad when people want to break away. I don't necessarily think it's bad. I think maybe it's good because there's clearly a clash of values, and the expectation that people are going to work together just because they share a similar geography is that shouldn't be the basis of collaboration for some. So when if there's a clash of values, if you're off the same page, people will leave, people won't engage. There's no sense of goals or plans. You're just all about the here and now. Or short-term plans in the network that exist, but they're not widely shared. And there's one resource, it's by, it's an NHS kind of group called Source for Networks, and they have a maturity matrix, which is excellent. It's really, really good. I'll try and find the link, but a lot of this information is from there. Okay, I won't claim that as my own one. Okay. The principles for agreement. Who decides? Is it majority rules? And what's something that's really important to me is commitment regardless of the decision. So with my network, we create decision-making principles because we spend loads of time developing the governance and then we don't follow it, or decisions just not being made, and we go round and round and round. in circles. Decisions take too long. People don't trust the decisions being made. And sometimes decisions or information is not well presented or informed. So then it makes it's really hard to make a decision because you're not quite sure on what we're making the decision on. So it's quite common in networks. So we've created a bit of a framework for our networks to follow to make that decision making process better. Before I carry on, actually, I'm just going to have a look at the chat.
So that was me trying to find the network matrix that you mentioned, but Gail has put something. I think that sharing and the style of comms are so important. Anyone got any good tips?
Sharing and the style of comms are so important. Anyone got it? Is that Gail, is that just generally communicating with your network, or are you talking about something specific?
You can talk now, Gail, if you want to answer that question. Oh, put in the chat. Yes, Jen.
So please, other people share. I would say, in regards to, so I will ask the networks, how do you like to, what's your preferred method of communication, like internally? So some like WhatsApp, some like Teams, some people like email, some people like picking up the phone and trying to, I would say I would kind of employ some marketing tactics here, and that you have one piece of information. So we'll do a newsletter. Some people will never open the newsletter, but I will put the highlights in the WhatsApp chat. People are always asking me questions, so then we'll do frequently asked questions around like the DES specification, and we'll just constantly repeat that. Because I work virtually, I do go to our network, but day to day I tend to work not with them, and even those practices are, you know, some people are still working from home. We will use WhatsApp, and sometimes quite a few of us like cycling. So even on the informal stuff is to put, you know, like, oh, I'm out on my bike today, I've just done this, I've just done that. That is really, really helpful. And trying to mix and match the informal, but your newsletter, WhatsApp, video instructions. So I will always do like maybe a maximum 2-minute video where I'm just talking through things. I use a PowerPoint slide, one slide that's got our 90-day plan on it. So it's around workforce, current active contracts and projects, systems and processes, and the current team. So I will put that in the WhatsApp group. I'll send that round email, and just trying to keep things to like 2 pages max and having a little bit of colour. So those are some general tips.
Thanks.
Okay, so back to decision-making processes. So I think lots of us can relate when it takes a while for decision-making to store. Can you see that main screen, Claire? Yeah, okay. And decision-making was inconsistent, definitely. So you might not be able to see all of these words, but an example of some decision-making criteria that I've used, that is around, so what would come up? So people would start to say, they would start to vocalize, this feels like it's going to be really hard. Is it going to be extra work? I thought we were doing this network to, you know, like reduce the burden on the current workforce. So every time we try to do something, how easy is this for us to implement, kept coming up. So we were like, that seems like a good decision-making process. And so around COVID vaccinations, it was like, how easy is this to do? We really explored it. And in the end, we went to our federation. What is best for the patient? So sometimes people will be saying, whilst I'm kind of backtracking, everybody's got a personal stake, but what is best for the patient? So we really have to think about not what's best for me personally all the time. It has, you know, what is best for the patient? Is it financially viable? So we do need to cost it and cost out and put on costs on it, and then make a decision. So all of these, make a decision, is it financially viable? Is this project going to make our existing workforce, you know, put them on their knees? Can we afford it? Who's going to do it? And then it goes back to the capacity of the network. Can we do this? And that links to our vision, like where are we going? There are some things that are so urgent that we do have to do, you know, like it's of national importance. We are going to do it, even if it goes against all of those. But we actually do have a choice. And I think some networks, depending on what the relationship is with your CCG, they will ask you to do things, and it feels like a demand. It feels like you can't say no. And if you do say no, then you're the network that's like, like the bad apple that doesn't want to play. But actually, if you know where you're going and you're operating your network like a business, you may have to say no to quite a few things to realize your vision, and that is okay. So having your decision making principles to guide your decision, and then it gives you confidence to say to whoever, we've gone through this, we've really explored it, and actually we're not going to do that at this moment in time. So you don't just say no, you just say at this moment in time I'm not going to do it, and if things change we'll definitely revisit it. And I think this is around the confidence to say no. And what sits behind this, and a lot of this stuff you will have in your network agreement, I'll whiz through it, but the finances are distributed on the weighted population, and a separate pot is allocated for management. So how do you manage your money? And finance is administered by the Federation. The day-to-day operational decisions are managed by the PCN leadership team. So when people say, why are we making these decisions? It's a bit like, because this is what we agreed. We don't have we're not making decisions by committee on the day-to-day operational running of the network. And if there is a lack of trust, then that needs to be addressed, because otherwise you won't get anything done. The PCN team agree income and expenditure, and that gets reported in a quarterly meeting or ad hoc if it's, you know, like an additional unexpected expenditure. And the network has a monthly meeting. The practice managers have a separate monthly meeting to discuss the implementation of the decisions. So that is a new one. So that's that started when I started Cranbrook. So what would happen is, in our main meetings, the practice managers would be really quiet, and then people would come to me individually and say, well, this is not going to work because of X, or have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? So now we have a, you know, like, we're the doers. Like the rest of the network say, yeah, we can do this, we can do that. And then it's like, we need to really think about how we can do this. So that's why that meeting exists. Around COVID, and you all would have had this, you know, like emergency meetings. It's like, we need a meeting at 6 o'clock tonight to discuss X, Y, and Z. 80% quality. So in the past, things we didn't progress unless everybody agreed. And that, you know, it was really slowing things down. And that is where, coming back to, not everybody is going to get their preference all the time, but we have to draw on a consensus, and we have to move forward, and not, sounds a bit, you might be surprised, but don't, you know, like, don't sabotage it. Don't hang back to prove your point if you don't quite agree with it. We have to go with the majority. And I hate saying that, because I know people will be thinking, Tara, you know, like, we're not kids, but it does happen when people don't get the decision. They can they can stop it from progressing. The network works through a development plan, a workforce plan, and locally enhanced services. And that is important. So a lot of the networks I've joined, I'm not a project manager or a network manager that, you don't want to pay me to just write documents. But if we never write it down, sometimes we can come off track. So it is important. We've got a development plan. We get money for that. Let's use that money to invest in the network and develop it. Like, that's the whole point of writing a plan. Let's write a good plan, and let's follow it, and let's document what we're doing and why we're doing it. So we're not just responding day to day, and we're not progressing. We're just kind of focusing on what's in front of our nose. each practice gets one vote. So there is that conversation around, you know, well, I'm the largest practice, so I should get more, you know, I get more patients. It's just like one vote. And we do document it and communicate it. So in the past, and I get it, think just things weren't as robust, but where my principle is for me, you know, like we try to keep it to 2 pages, really succinct. Doesn't have to be, you know, like chapter and verse. We do need a bit of a guide. Okay, so let me stop sharing my screen. So those are the decision-making principles. Success is not an accident. So there you can all point to organisations and networks and people where they're like, they seem to have it, you know, seem to be performing really well, and it's kind of perceived as that they're really lucky, but it's not. They're not lucky. They may be very good at their job, but they are very committed to wanting to be the best at their jobs and making sure they surround themselves with the right people. So success is not an accident, and we have to build on what is working well. So one exercise, and we all heard of this, is the after action review. And I did a lot of these when the kind of the nation started setting up their COVID hot hubs. So they set them up. And to just take moments, so we have a quarterly meeting, which is a little bit longer. So we have monthly meetings. I have a weekly meeting with the CD. And even actually, after some meetings, we will say, we'll do our mini after action review, and we'll say what went well about that meeting and what would be even better if. When it's like a big project, we'll ask what, I think the first official question is, what did we expect to happen? And we're trying to work out what lessons can we take from this. So what we did this, we set up this hot hub, what was the intention? Then what actually happened? And then what went well and why. And I think we always have to be asking what has gone well and why. And I think when we don't, that's when you get caught in making the same mistakes. You're not capturing your systems and processes. We're just, you know, like constantly firefighting. And then finally, how can we improve upon, what can we improve upon, and how can we do this? And I think those questions that, if you don't remember any of this, I should have put it on a slide, it's what is working well and what would be even better if. So after this meeting, I will reflect what's gone well, what would be even better if. And that even better if is not to be critical. Let me stop sharing my screen. It's not to be critical of yourself, of your colleagues, of the project. You're just trying to work out, okay, when we set up for example, the COVID hot hub, what went well? Actually, we reduced loads of bureaucracy, and it was easy to borrow staff from other organisations, and people weren't going, oh, but what about annual leave? What about this? What about that? We're there on different terms and conditions to us. It was like, this is the urgency about it. It is of benefit to us all if Tara can support, you know, we need a lead to do this across the area. And what's gone well, actually, WhatsApp is the speed of communication, and having a morning huddle worked really, really well. And then actually it started to peter off. It felt a little bit, you know, like sometimes like, oh, I don't know what to talk about. So then it kind of, it pitters off. But when you're working out what is it that went well, and in that COVID hot hub example, lots of roles, lots of people that may not have been perceived as the lead or the manager stepped into doing lots of things that people may have been a bit surprised about. And lots of feedback was all of our networking skills. If we didn't know something, we would hop into, you know, like COVID September leaders group, and, you know, like you could go and find out another, you know, like another framework. It was really easy to share. We started working with our networks. The face-to-face was really, really important. And now things are semi going back to normal. It's like we can't forget those things. We should really try to make an effort to capture what are we doing that we're doing really, really well, and let's build on that. We all have weaknesses, and we can't ignore them, but we have to decide, do we want to focus on our weaknesses or focus on our strengths? And I would say focus on your strengths and use that to propel you to go forward. And I think COVID, as difficult and as challenging as it has been, has really changed the way that we work. And I think some things we need to hang on to. And the relationship with the CCG in other areas really, really strengthened. So now if I've got a question, I can just phone up Natalie, whereas before I'd have to send her a very formal, you know, like email. It'd take her ages to come back to me. And she said to me, Tara, you know, Fridays is a really good day for me. So if I've got a question, I might save it up to Friday. If that takes 2 seconds, she'll be like, yes, no. And we can work. So I would really encourage you guys to start asking, if you don't already on a regular basis, to start asking yourself, what is working well? What would be even better if? And in Teams, we call it the ideas doc. So it's like, it's just a Excel spreadsheet, and that's where we write it. So we will say meeting on the team meeting on this, what worked really well, the network was really engaged, we made decisions on X, Y, and Z, what would be even better if, and that is that I make sure I meet with the lead practice managers to discuss X, Y, and Z. And then, because I'm interim, if I leave, I'm leaving that intellectual property there. I'm not taking it with me. And then the next network manager has to learn, and, you know, like learn the hard way, learn from making mistakes, because it's not a nice way to learn all the time. So we're always trying to, in the networks that we are working in, it's like a business. We need to have a solid infrastructure. So anybody can leave, we need to be able to take our holiday and it still continue, and us not come back to, well, only Tara knows how to do this, only Jazz knows how to do that. And that comes from understanding what is working well, what would be even better if. So any questions?
Really useful tips, thanks Tara. Sorry to interrupt.
That's okay.
Just a thought there, I really like sort of playing on the strengths, and I think I really like limiting the amount of even better ifs, because we can all focus on 25 things that we could do even better if. So probably pick sort of 2 or 3, I think. Otherwise we're all going to be drowning in lots of improvement plans, and we're just going to have unrealistic goals. It's going to feel too overwhelming. So yeah, pick the most important ones.
Yeah. So we do 3. So 3 up to 3. What would be what has gone well, and 3 even better ifs. And sometimes it may seem really the what went well may seem so like silly to say. I'm just trying to think of an example. It'll be like, I had a really good meeting today because I made sure, like, I had my breakfast, Claire and I closed down all of our tabs. I was fully focused. Yesterday I had a really, really good day. And the reason why I had a really good day yesterday is because I had a day full of meetings and said to my team, I've got a day full of meetings. I'm going to leave you guys alone. I'm just going to focus. And my assistant Valentina, let's check in today at 9 o'clock. And at the end of that day, it was a really good day for me because I communicated that I was going to be a little bit busy. If you need to make decisions, team, I trust you, just make them. You don't have to check with me. And that was a really good day. And it sounds so silly, but some days I forget to tell or vocalize to my team what I'm doing. I expect them to know, and then they're constantly messaging me on Teams saying, what about this, what about that, what about this? So that was a really, really good day. So sometimes, and even you can ask the question of yourself, and I think that's like, we do that in our quality improvement, that is a really good way to build on your strengths and recognize what has gone well. And it doesn't have to be earth-shattering. It's probably just the little things that we take for granted. There's like, that's the key. It's the really, really little things versus the big stuff. Okay, so to finish off, it would be really nice, I think, Danny, you've identified a fantastic bit of training there. I'm like, can I pull that together quickly? It'd be good to know what other areas that you guys are looking for support from, and that's not from me, but it'd be good to, from Claire's perspective, to understand. So I think there is another poll around what future sessions would you like support with, and if your option isn't on there, if you pop that in the chat. Have you got that poll, or did I make that up?
Honors working in the background to do it.
Okay, cool, thank you. And in the meantime, has anybody got Any questions, any thoughts?
There you go. So the poll's launched now, if you can.
Thank you.
And yeah, just unmute yourself and have a chat to us.
It's always like the nerve-wracking bit.
People are voting still.
Okay.
Thank you for your votes. I think just really informs us on what is needed locally, so we can put that on for you, and that's going to be a good use of time.
I think one of the things that we've done in our PCN is we've got like our people plan. So I'm really chuffed that the network wanted to do that, and that we had lots of conversations around, because recruitment's quite competitive. So what is it we can offer our network? What little things can we do to give ourselves a competitive edge, and how can we make sure we are onboarding people efficiently and people really clear what we're doing? And we're doing a lot with tech, so that's been and commissioning in organisations, being really honest with ourselves and saying, actually, have we got the capacity to do this, or should we commission in another service? And that's, so we're doing that, and that we're having a bit of a mix and match approach, and that's been really good. We wanted to do everything ourselves, and it's a bit like we we need help.
Okay, so the results of the poll, pretty split, but that gives us some great ideas more around enhancing performance of PCN leadership. It's quite popular. And then John's adding another comment on there as to what he would like.
Cool.
Yeah, new ICS local structures are still emerging. It's very much to say, it's still kind of all in progress. I think has been a meeting this week, in fact, on that.
So I know the NHS Confederation has loads of resources on that, on ICSs. So if you're not part of the NHS Confederation, let me know and we'll get you added to the app. So that's a really good place where there's loads of people that are in PCN, variety of roles, having that conversation.
Perfect, thank you. So if there's any further questions, we'll stay on for another 5 minutes. If you've got any individual questions that you want to ask, I'm more than happy to sort of hear those and listen to those. But a huge thank you to Tara and to you for attending. I'm being reminded that to complete your survey as well from Ola. So thank you, Ola, for setting the day up as well. So huge thanks, Tara, and everyone for attending, but we will stay on for a few minutes if you've got any other individual questions.